is now a member of the team that is a sentient island. Their name is Impossible City. They just dropped in July of last year, so it's almost their birthday. Impossible City was created by a separate group of heroes that had trapped a bunch of monsters called the Ashen Combine inside the city. The heroes eventually just mysteriously disappeared and the monsters got out. They proved really quickly why they were trapped. They started destroying worlds and defeating heroes, all while dragging around Impossible City as their headquarters against their will. The city was modified to serve the group, but it knew that it didn't want to. It wasn't until the Avengers battled the monsters that things got interesting. Captain America and Black Panther went up to the island intending to destroy it. However, the island started speaking to them, which was probably the most normal thing to happen to them all that week. The island was convinced the Avengers weren't going to win the fight, so it offered to blow itself up as a sacrifice, but Captain America and Black Panther were like, absolutely not, you're a good guy now, so don't do that. The Avengers defeated the Ashen Combine because they are the Avengers, and then they destroyed the things on the island that were controlling it, so now Impossible City is free. Impossible City asked the Avengers to join the team, and who are they to say no? If mutants can have a sentient island, so can the Avengers. Welcome to the team, Impossible City, she says like she's on it. One can dream though. Psylocke has been around since the 80s, but she just joined the Avengers after the events at that one Hellfire Gala and everything that came after that one gala. Captain America was putting together the new Avengers Unity Squad and recruited Psylocke to the team. She joined because they had common goals. She probably wouldn't have done it unless she needed to. It wasn't until she got through a few battles on the team that she decided to stick around. After the Avengers came out victorious against Orcus and the Mutant Liberation Front, she must have decided to stick around considering she is still an active member. Psylocke is known for her telepathic abilities and her martial arts skills. She's been part of the X-Men for years. It's the Avengers that are just now cluing in on her talent. Similar to Psylocke is Penance, or Monet. She started out as an X-Men, but after the disastrous events of that one gala, she joined Captain America's Avengers Unity Division. Penance is actually the second identity of Monet that was created by her evil brother. She told him she wouldn't go around the universe terrorizing people with him, so he turned her into Penance, a mute creature with sharp, hard red skin. Eventually, she was freed from this body thanks to other family members. She did have a villain era, but ultimately, when mutants were in danger, she stepped up to the plate, joined the good side, the Avengers Unity Division, and saved her community. Johnny Watts went from vigilante on the West Coast to West Coast Avenger. Johnny met Kate Bishop while she was investigating the disappearance of his sister's girlfriend. Naturally, he decided to help Kate out, and they saved his sister's girlfriend. Seems like he had fun working with Kate because they continued working together and investigating crimes. At this point, all Kate knows is that Johnny is just a human that's really good at fighting. However, during this really big battle, Johnny shields her from some falling concrete, so surprise, he actually has superpowers. His power is omnimorph duplication, and that is turning your body into any substance you touch. Watts wears vibranium jewelry, so he always has access to a strong substance to transform into, and I love it when heroes are smart. It seems like a bare minimum requirement, but you would be surprised. When Kate was reforming the West Coast Avengers, Watts was all for it, and at this point, he took on his hero name. You are never going to guess what Johnny Watts' hero name is. Fuse. The commitment to the bit is outstanding. Sister and brother duo Goodness and Lucky joined the West Coast Avengers back in 2016, but it wasn't an easy road to get there. Goodness and Lucky are humans with the power to turn into an animal. Goodness into a blue wolf and Lucky into a pink two-tailed fox. One night, while they were minding their business, a group of supervillains attacked their neighborhood, leading to Lucky ending up in the hospital. It eventually came out that the attack was orchestrated by a councilman, so a high-risk area of the city would be eliminated. Obviously, Goodness is really upset about her current circumstances and ends up transforming into her wolf form in the police station. The Great Lakes Avengers were able to help out and get her to relax, and she ultimately decided to use her odd power for good. She joined the GLA as Good Boy, helping the team defeat the Bodge Squad. As of right now, Lucky has not joined the team. Gwenpool quickly charmed people when she appeared on a variant cover, so much so that she manifested into an actual Marvel character. character. Despite technically first appearing in 2015, she didn't join an Avengers team until 2018, the same team Fuse would have joined. When Kate was pulling together that team, Gwenpool was accidentally recruited after appearing in the room right after Kate rejected a bunch of unqualified candidates. Gwenpool might be chaotic, but she is good at what she does. She, like Deadpool, is a fourth wall breaker because she was from a universe where Marvel is just comics and movies, so she understands how heroes' stories worked and the physical page structure of them. She interacts with text boxes, manipulates stories based on writing conventions one would typically see in a super story. Her personality and unique character backstory and her overall aesthetic have cemented her as a fan favorite character. When her edition of the West Coast Avengers disbanded, she was aware that it was because the comic was cancelled, and that led to some major and strange developments in the Marvel Universe. She was worried she would be cancelled or erased and wanted to ensure she would always have a place in the Marvel Universe, and one of her many attempts at doing that was trying to unmask Spider-Man, among many other things. Brandy Selby was here for a good time, not a long time, and I am speaking so literally. She was born with the Star brand. However, every time she used the power that came with it, she would quickly age. Years of her life would biologically fly by in just a couple of hours or even minutes. Brandy has had quite the life. The Avengers assisted with her birth. Then she ended up in an alternate reality being raised by Groot and Rocket Raccoon. Good luck, Brandy, with that pairing. Unfortunately, Rocket of that universe got into a fight with Dr. Spectrum and lost more than just the fight. As revenge, Brandy went to find Spectrum and take him out. There was also all this drama happening on Earth. Coulson warped reality into a world without the Avengers, and Starbrand helped fix that. Eventually, she ended up back on Earth, fought the multiverse masters of evil. She aged into a young adult from that brawl. As the Avengers were traveling across time, Starbrand eventually used her powers to the point of becoming an old woman, and she was of course benched. She ended up saving the day when she and Firehair sacrificed themselves in an effort to undo the damage to all the Earths by the Masters. She literally was around for a good time, but not a long time, and her sacrifice will not be forgotten. But I mentioned Firehair briefly for a second there, and she's got quite the life story. I have to yap about it. She debuted in 2017, but in 616 timeline, she is literally a million years old, maybe more. And here's just a short list of some of what she has done in her life. She bonded with the Phoenix Force, she was raised by wolves, founded the prehistoric Avengers, fell in love with Odin, fought a Celestial, sacrificed herself for the fate of the universe, and is technically one of Thor's moms. Truly, her memoir would be the most jam-packed book to ever hit the shelves in a New York Times bestseller. While she is not part of the modern Avengers, she is part of the prehistoric Avengers and met up with the modern Avengers, and that's when she sacrificed herself alongside Brandy. She was one of the first hosts for the Phoenix Force. You might also see her referred to as Lady Phoenix. The reason she is kind of Thor's mom is she assisted with his birth. Mother Earth gave birth to him, but then he passed due to Lawfree, so Firehair resurrected him and put some of the Phoenix power in him, making her his second mother. Quite the life story. Weapon H is another new kid on the block, debuting in 2017, joining an Avengers team in 2019. He has been part of the War Avengers and the Savage Avengers, and when I tell you his life story, you will understand why. First things first, he made this list because I read that he was a hybrid of Wolverine and Hulk and verbally said, oh my god, that's so cool, so he had to be here. Clayton Cortez, before he became this hybrid Hulk-verine, was just a kid who dealt with some bad cards. He was just a kid who was dealt some bad cards in life. He didn't have a nice family, and when he grew up and joined the military, he was assigned to a mission that involved harming innocents, so he sabotaged it. That got him sold to the Weapon X Batch H division that was working on creating Hulk, Wolverine cyborgs with a taste for endangering mutants. Not his day, week, month, or even his year. He became Weapon H. He eventually escaped that facility, and his main mission was making sure all data of his family and friends that he likes are off the radar of anyone who would want to harm them. He has met both Wolverine and Hulk and fought with and against both Wolverine and Hulk. He fought them either out of necessity or he was under mind control. He was recruited by Captain America to join Captain America's War Avengers, and they had a great time. Weapon H has all the powers that Wolverine and Hulk has. He wins at life, and I cannot think of a cooler pairing. Finishing off with another new Avenger that I think is really cool. We have Deathlock. Deathlock is Miles Morales from Earth 807,128. Originally part of the Champions, he ended up facing Annihilus. In that fight, Miles ended up passing, but then he didn't. He ended up turning into Deathlock. From what I can gather from the comic, it's likely because Michael stole the cosmic control rod from Annihilus and broke it. It caused him to become more cyborg than man. Miles in this universe is very similar to his 616 counterpart. He's fearless and funny and fights like his life depends on it because it always does. Deathlock is part of the Savage Avengers, just like Weapon H. Even though they are from separate Earths, there's a lot of timeline messes happening, and that's how that happened. Deathlock debuted in May of 2022. We are starting off so strong with a worm-like metahuman called Velvet and Worm. What's going on? It's Doom Patrol, which is the right place for a villain turned hero like this. So Velvet is a worm form that works with a kid called Worm. Velvet likely created the human kid because he is capable of creating humanoid constructs capable of independent thoughts and actions. Likely he did this because he was supposed to be a spy for Peacemaker. The kid body could stay in one place while the worm roams around collecting information. The worm also lives in the body's stomach. It looks really weird and I don't like it. The boy and worm, they are separate things. The boy doesn't survive the end of the comic, but Velvet the Worm does and joins Doom Patrol, accompanying them on later missions. We have yet another alien out to destroy the universe. Everyone say hello to Necrostar. It looks like a big, scary, slippery starfish. The Necrostar is a star conqueror alien. On its to-do list is conquer the universe. We've seen ambition like this before, so how will the Necrostar do it this time? Well, it has necrospores on it and in it that it can release. When released, these spores attach onto hosts and control their minds. The Necrostar is capable of flight, regeneration, which makes sense if it's a big starfish. It's also capable of telepathy adjacent actions. It debuted in Titan's Beast World in November of last year. We've unlocked a new character, one of Dick Grayson's ancestors. He is known as Son of Grey. He lived in 14th century Normandy and he is the Nightwing of his time. Son of Grey was a merchant's son, but his father was killed by, I'm assuming, the Joker of that time. Son of Grey is naturally very upset by his father's death and goes on a revenge spree in which we see him do all the acrobatic feats that we are used to seeing from Dick Grayson. He is described to have a fire in his heart and be the spawn of Satan or sin. He is one resilient fighter. He was speared by the 14th century Joker and walked it off. He also almost said his own version of the Princess Bride line, "I am the son of Grey, you killed my father," but he never got to finish the line because the Joker gave him the name we know today, Grayson. The story is really short. It's only 2 parts, but it is always fun to see old-timey versions of your favorite characters. There is an evil version of Jesus that was just born. Speaking of, his name is The End. His mom is Natalia Knight, also known as Nocturna. She is a vampire, and vampires aren't supposed to be able to naturally reproduce, so The End is kind of a big red flag, a big question mark, and it's a bit scary that he's here. His mom thinks he is the Dark Messiah and his destiny is to usher an era of horror and truth. I would love it if he didn't do that. Also, that seems like a lot to ask of this little kid. At least wait until his terrible twos. The End made his debut in May's Outsiders 5. So now we have Evil Jesus, and sticking with the Christmas theme, Evil Santa also made his debut recently. DC's Krampus truly would scare anybody. He looks like absolutely terrifying. He made his debut when Batman Santa Claus Silent Night came out on December 5th of last year. The comic is basically Santa and Krampus. They were once friends, and then Krampus was locked away. Now he's back and terrorizing the city, out to ruin Christmas to get revenge on Santa. Him and Krampus were like a good cop, bad cop duo. Krampus is clearly an extremely high-level threat now because everybody comes out to lend a hand to trap him. It is like the Christmas party of the decade, and I do hope they did a Secret Santa considering they were all together for the holidays. Krampus considers himself a god beast, which does make sense as he's shown to have supernatural powers, likely developed from his time in the Nightmare realms. I tried looking for other Krampuses that could exist in DC history and found nothing, which I really can't believe they never capitalized on the character before. Glad they did now. Batman once visited a child psychiatrist. He went to therapy. I know, I can't believe it either. His name is Dr. Charles Quinton. He worked at Arkham Asylum, Dr. Quinton founded the children's wing of Arkham Asylum, and it was the pride of the city. But then he ran away without a trace and with all the files for his patients. That was the thing that ruined Arkham and made it what it is today. While working with Bruce, the Doctor did help, but he made Bruce forget part of the incident with his parents and also all the memories of their time working together. Dr. Quinton is very mysterious, and it's suggested that maybe he manipulated Bruce into eventually becoming Batman. Unfortunately, Dr. Quinton exists on Earth 46, so that is the Batman Gargoyle of Gotham world, so it's like not canon, but it is fun. The story is interesting, and basically it's kind of hinting that Bruce would have been Batman in every universe, even if he got therapy. Apex Ava is a decently new character, and her story is something else. Ava was a hunter specializing in rare or dangerous animals. Every time she completed a job, she would get that animal tattooed on her skin. She discovered she had a disease and was dying. For some reason, she decided that since she is dying, other people should go down with her. She switched to hunting people. Thankfully, she got caught and put in Arkham Tower. First day of Beast World rolls around and a spore comes into her cell. She has nothing to lose. She has a few days left to live, so why not eat the weird thing? The spore ends up curing her disease and turning her green and giving her animal-based powers. She decides to become the Wicked Witch of the West and gather up all the other beast people and create an underground fighting ring. Nightwing and Superman end up capturing Ava and stopping her messed up fighting ring, but before she can be held accountable, she escapes by turning into a bird, so she is still out there and likely still causing trouble. I personally am obsessed with Elizabeth Marston Prince. If you haven't heard of her, she is from the Wonder Woman Trinity universe, and she is Wonder Woman's daughter. Elizabeth grew up alongside fellow super kids Damien Wayne and John Kent. She was a bit younger, so they would often babysit her. There were a few times the trio went on missions together as kids, one time defeating Killer Croc, the other time they just visited the moon because Elizabeth wouldn't fall asleep. Trinity is still quite young and still loves to mess with her friends, challenging them to races, or making them all go on a mission to a Greek cave where their tolerance for pain, honor, and skill are tested. Elizabeth is her mother's daughter. She trained like her mom, she leads like her mom, and she is immortal and strong like her mom. What is quite cool about Elizabeth is she is the first holder of the 3 lassos of fate. I am urgently calling all fans of the Warrior Cats book series because you are going to love Kyle the Catboy. I can't believe this character exists for many reasons. Catboy is already a term used in pop culture with a very specific brand of person in mind. What was DC thinking? Kyle is your typically troubled kid. He was a petty criminal, went to juvie a few times, and didn't have a strong family unit. He had a mentor, but that mentor ended up betraying him. Eventually, he made the decision to splice his DNA with feline DNA, wild choice, and he became Catboy. There is lore surrounding Catboys, which means there are many Catboys in this universe. They typically travel in groups called prides. Kyle is pretty special. He knows magic, which he learned from the evil mentor guy. Some things Kyle has used the magic for include electroblasts, creating a bird to locate a specific target, controlling fire, he can make someone take an impromptu catnap, and creates force fields. Batman enlists his help for dealing with a problem, and like most times Batman is around an orphan troubled kid, he becomes a positive, almost father figure in his life and transforms the little outlaw into a little hero. Kyle ends up becoming a vigilante just like Batman. Truly, I can't believe what I'm about to share with y'all. The Childminder's story is out of this world. The Childminder is the name of the character. She is a bit older than some of the other characters, at almost 1.5 years old, but her story makes up for it. Important to note about the character, she is a time scavenger and she's kinda like me, cares a whole lot about the kid heroes who disappeared without a trace. Flashpoint caused a lot of problems, a lot of timeline changes, and caused 13 Golden Age sidekicks to disappear. They were taken out of history and placed in stasis pods. Unfortunately, their place of freeze was attacked and they were released back into the timeline before it was ready for them. These sidekicks were just kind of floating through history, so Childminder tracked them all down and took them to, are you ready for this? Orphan Island, if the boot fits. Time is not a thing there, so the sidekicks would be safe there until further notice. Childminder is a bad person, but everything she is doing sounds good, right? Well, this Half chicken, half old woman Clown also kidnapped sidekicks that weren't erased from history, like for example, Wing. Childminder says she cares about the kids, but then this guy named Hourman shows up and he says he will return her to her youth in exchange for the kids, and she says yes, so how much does she really care about them? But then a fight breaks out, and then a time storm breaks out. Childminder is hit with energy and de-ages to the point where she is an egg again. At some point, she claims to be the inspiration for the children's storybook character Mother Goose, as if her lore wasn't wild enough. Up first is Hank McCoy's clone, Henry. Everybody has a clone in the Marvel Universe. If you don't, you have one coming, or assume you're just not important enough. Beast's clone, Henry Philip McCoy, no Hank for simplicity's sake, debuted this year in January in X-Force 48. Beast is in his evil era right now. He got his blue claws on a bit too much power and has lost the plot a little. He betrayed everyone and created a bunch of clones of himself to help his research along. There was a battle with Wolverine and almost all of Beast's clones were destroyed, except of course Henry. X-Force leader Sage secretly saved Henry and kept him hidden away until he was needed. Beast somehow got worse, and X-Force was like, it's time, the only thing that can handle Beast is Beast. So they downloaded Beast's backup in Cerebro from a few years ago when he was still a good guy. Henry is a little scared at first, I cannot blame him for that. He finds out what the real Beast is doing and his world is rocked. He finds Wonder Man and the pair go after Hank. They find him with a black hole gun underwater because he is trying to suck Arakko into a black hole for safekeeping. Why didn't I think of that? Hank and Henry fight. Wolverine also ends up joining in because he's everywhere. Throughout this fight, Henry is trying to convince Hank to be a better person, and it eventually works. The black hole gun was already hot to go, so Hank sacrificed himself and was sent away by his own machine. Then Henry moved in with Wonder Man, which could mean nothing. Since this Beast is a clone with almost all of Beast's memories, we can only assume he has all of Beast's power and intellect too. Thank you so much to the person that was like, you know what we need? Space Spider-Man, because we did need Space Spider-Man. I like to have fun, why not? Persephone Parker is Star Spider. She is also the coolest and I love her suit. She is from Earth 1978 and debuted in Edge of Spider-Verse 3 in April. She lives in the space station Bronx because that's where her family is from. She is on the station because she is working as an apprentice to Professor Osborn as they study quantum engineering. Persephone is quite sneaky. She is secretly dating Osborn's daughter and also secretly is a space superhero. She utilizes the spiders on the ship, but they are not actual spiders. They are nanobots that use a special tech. They are what form Persephone's cool outfit. Spider stands for Sanitation, Planning, Integrated Defense and Engineering Robots. Star Spider's biggest fight so far was against Octavius and the Kree army that were trying to invade the station. And speaking of Octavius, I can't believe they made Doc Ock scarier than he already is. As Doc Ock, he is creepy in a way only a deranged man with tentacles coming out of his back can be, but in the Space Spider-Verse story, those tentacles are organic, like mouths, and they have teeth. He's also purple and has bug eyes, but I got the shock of my life reading further, and I come to see that he actually just has like a blue octopus attached to his back, like a parasitic backpack. The tentacles are pretty useful in a fight, I will admit. In addition to the teeth, they can also grab with their claws. Octavius nearly wins the fight, but he ends up breaking Star Spider's arm. But she is able to defeat him thanks to the nano spider bots. Octavius ends up disappearing before Star Spider can get the final hit in, but he promises they will meet again. This next character is so unbelievably cute, I can't take it. His name is Walpurgis, and he's Agatha Harkness's cat's kitten. So Agatha's cat Ebony had a kitten named Walpurgis. Agatha wanted to recruit Brielle Brooks as an apprentice due to her talent, but she refused. No hard feelings. Agatha had maybe the perfect response and gifted Brielle Walpurgis. This is my dream scenario. Not much is known about the kitten other than it is most likely a magic kitten and it's purple and it's cute. The kitten debuted in Marvel's Voices Infinity Comic 96 in April. We have another spider Spider Kid in the house, but this one is less fun. Boy Spider dropped in February of this year in Spider-Boy 4. He was a clone of Spider-Boy, designed to be a bit more of like the monster side of him. Spider-Boy has a monster form, but Boy Spider is in that monster form all the time. He was created by Madame Monstrosity. She's also a recent debut from August of last year, and she does a lot of genetic research inspired by the High Evolutionary, so you can kind of guess her vibe. She let this evil boy spider clone loose around the city with absolutely no morals built into that body. He started ruining lives really quick, and specifically ruining Spider-Boy's life and reputation in the city. Boy Spider ends up finding Spider-Man, Miles is Spider-Man, and the two fight. Eventually, Spider-Boy and Peter show up, and Spider-Boy is able to have a heart-to-heart with his clone. The clone relaxes and goes home. That makes it sound like really tame. I promise there was drama, but also this is so new that I don't want to spoil the twist ending quite yet. Boy Spider has a more threatening look to him. Spider-Boy is just kind of like this cute kid in this cute little costume running around the city. Boy Spider has multiple eyes, spider legs on his back, pinchers, claws, a furry patch on his back. He's just a scarier kid overall. Boy Spider shows that he has pretty much every power Spider-Boy has, including a venomous bite and the ability to speak in a spider language. The first comic in a Ms. Marvel Mutant Menace gave us the gift of a new villain, hopefully later mutant, anti-hero, or even hero, the Planter. He looks like the mascot for Green Giant Green Beans, simply because his skin is green and he wears a cape of leaves. The Planter is a mutant on Earth 616, and he takes on the qualities of any plant he touches. He touches a rose, and he would grow thorns. The Planter decides to use his abilities to rob jewelry stores across Jersey City, because that is a victimless crime, because jewelry stores have insurance, at least that's what the Planter thinks. The first big use of his power that we see is him making a getaway by making a big helicopter seed grow out of his back. It worked. It's hinted that the Planter has the potential to join the good side, but the comics are still coming out, so we will have to wait and see. New demigod villain just dropped in February's Miles Morales Spider-Man 17. Zip Zephyr is a menace drenched in the sweat of Theseus and has an enchanted bag that blows air, and that's him. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. As far as I'm aware, Zip was kind of like the intro villain for a comic. He's there for a good time, not a long time. Miles, Ms. Marvel, and Shift were fighting this guy in Brooklyn. We get thrown into the middle of the fight, pretty much, so it's unclear why Zip is doing all of this. Personally, I think for fun. Zip is probably from ancient Greece, because he says he bathed in the sweat of Theseus, which makes him really slippery, which makes him really fast. He is also too slippery for webs to stick to him. The other thing Zip has going for him is his bag. It blows powerful bursts of air. I think Miles summed up everyone's feelings about this when he said, "A bag of wind? What is even going on right now?" Zip gets KO'd by Shift and presumably arrested. No amount of Theseus' sweat is going to help him slip out of that one. You can tell Marvel writers were having fun when they created the Circus of Crime. The Circus of Crime debuted in January in Doctor Strange 11. There are 4 people in this circus. They are all goofy. Up first is our Ring Mistress. Ring Mistress takes after her father, Ring Master. Their thing is they wear purple and green and commit the majority of their crimes by hypnotizing people, using the device in their top hat, then robbing them. This Circus of Crime had plans to go when no Circus of Crime had gone before, and make the hypnosis device massive in a big Ferris wheel. Ring Mistress has rounded out her circus with all the performer types that one would want to see. We have an acrobat named Gymnasty. Think of like an average skilled acrobat. She's that, but with the drive to crush you. Then we have Stefano Stiletto. He is a knife thrower. And then finally we have the strongman of the group with the most incredible name, Chief Beef. He used science to create the ultimate bulking routine and diet, so he is very, very strong. The circus is so funny to look at, and I'm glad we got another version of it. Nephil, also maybe known as Frozen Charlotte, is Lucifer's wife. She debuted in Incredible Hulk 9 in February. She is one of those characters that has really good intentions, but the worst possible way of executing them. She wants to make sure good people, innocent people, are protected from the world, but also from demons and bad entities and eventually her own husband Lucifer in the underworld. She wants to make sure innocent souls were protected. She did do that, I guess. What she does is take these people's souls and trap them in vessels designed to outlive the human body so the soul never has to go to the underworld. The vessels, they look like these little statues, so she traps people against their will in these action figures. Right idea, wrong methods. When Lucifer failed to beat God, he was exiled from heaven and his wife was too. Lucifer went to the underworld, but Charlotte chose to hide out on Earth, which resulted in her being hunted by angels and devils for thousands of years. I am sorry to say, but she does have the look of someone who has been on the run and married to the devil. She is literally skin and bones and 4 stories tall minimum with spikes on her. She wears a veil over her face. She can't appear as a human, typically an old woman. That's how she finds her victims. And you can tell she's going devil mode when her eyes white out. She did end up fighting the Hulk, and that fight caught the attention of Lucifer, who then took his wife away. But she was happy to go with him. She is capable of some level of energy blasts, and she has wings and all the powers that come with being a divine and also demonic being, so she's pretty cool. Earth 66 has been around for almost 2 years now. It started as a one-off Earth, but they keep popping in every once in a while, which is nice because this Earth is the Spider-Man, but make them dinosaurs Earth. I like to see what Spider-Rex is up to because he is very cool. This year in May, they introduced a new villain for Spider-Rex, Lizard, an actual lizard, not a man in a suit this time. When Spider-Rex was saving the day once, he stepped on Lizard's tail and ripped it off. From that point forward, Lizard decided Spider-Rex would pay. Spider-Rex got his powers from a rock that merges 2 life forms when they make contact. Lizard planned to use a small piece of this rock to come into contact with Spider-Rex and then get his tail back. However, it went so wrong, he ended up touching a bunch of other animals first, eventually becoming an ape, piranha, capybara, turtle, pterodactyl, brachiosaurus, crocodile monster mix. Truly, it could not have gone worse for him. He does end up super powerful, which is like the bright side here, I guess. He uses the rock to turn Spider-Rex's girlfriend into a human, and humans are ugly in this world. It ends with MJ and Lizard Monster making contact with each other, and MJ turns back to normal, and Lizard becomes an ugly human named Kurt. And that's how humanity was started.
Heroes like Eric Brooks, or as most of us know him, Blade. Blade has been around since 1973, so it actually took me by surprise when I learned that he didn't become an actual mainline Avenger until Avengers Volume 8, number 12. Born with an extremely unique vampire physiology, Eric used his powers to wipe out evil vampires, taking on the title of Daywalker. Now, to be fair, he was once part of the Mighty Avengers before being invited to join the main Avengers team by Black Panther. But while on the Avengers, he did a lot. Like, I mean a lot. He ended a vampire civil war, saved Ghost Rider in hell, battled the Dark Elf Malekith in the War of the Realms, helped stop the Egyptian god Khonshu from taking over the entire Earth, and he recruited Dracula and his vampire nation to help fight Null, the symbiote god, and King in Black. Blade came to the Avengers with a heck of a lot of supernatural expertise, and he was amazing on the team until he left to be Dracula's own sheriff, which... what? Roberto da Costa, the mutant who also goes by the name Sunspot, first ever joined the Avengers, accepting Captain America's offer alongside the mutant Cannonball. Sunspot came across as a bit of a comedic member of the team, and he didn't really seem to take his Avenger status as seriously as others did, but that pretty quickly turned around. Where Iron Man used to fill in the laid-back billionaire role on the team, Roberto stepped into that role pretty smoothly and got the team out of quite a few problematic moments. It's arguable to say that he really stepped into his own as an Avenger when he bought the whole of AIM and used the organization to create his own Avengers team in New Avengers Volume 4, and then again in US Avengers. His time as an Avenger not only boosted up his status from a C-list hero to one in the spotlight, but it also brought multiple creative Avengers series, which as comic book fans is something that we will not be upset about, ever. Maya Lopez, also known as Ekko, is honestly really cool. She has really cool photographic reflexes just like Taskmaster. She's been Ronin for a time and even been a host for the Phoenix Force, and she also became an Avenger. Now, initially Maya was actually a bit of a villain, being manipulated by the Kingpin in order to try and take down Daredevil. Luckily though, Maya was able to discover the truth about Kingpin and the lies he fed her, and that pushed her into reshifting her focus to become a hero. It was from there that she became Ronin, and thanks to a good old recommendation from Daredevil himself, she met up with Captain America and started working with the New Avengers in 2005. She would eventually be brought down by Elektra, and she would eventually be saved and revived, helped out during World War Hulk, Secret Invasion, and she even worked very closely with Moon Knight for a while before being revived yet again, and was eventually granted the Phoenix Force. She would eventually join the actual true Avengers in Avengers Volume 8 number 54 from 2022, facing the multiversal Masters of Evil. Next up, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brasher is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters around. Blue Marvel didn't actually make his debut in Marvel Comics until 2008, but when he showed up, his origin story retroactively placed him in the Marvel Universe way back in the day. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, which should in theory pretty much impossible, and it gave him an insane amount of power. Brasher would rejoin the superhero community alongside Luke Cage's 1970s Mighty Avengers, which in the real world happened in 2014, before he went on to join with Captain Marvel and Black Panther on the Avengers adjacent team known as the Ultimates in 2016, and most recently, he joined the Defenders and went rather, beyond. Next up, Eden Fessy, aka Manifold, first appeared as an incredibly underrated hero in Jonathan Hickman and Brian Michael Bendis' Secret Warriors series, alongside a group of other legacy heroes recruited by Nick Fury in 2009. Now, Manifold is a mutant with the insanely godlike ability to manipulate space, which he most often uses as a teleporter. He was actually the student to another mutant teleporter known as Gateway, but following with writer Jonathan Hickman, Manifold joined the Avengers in Avengers Volume 5 in 2014/2015 for one of the greatest Avengers runs we have had in a long time. As the Avengers expanded to a bigger scope than they have ever done before, Manifold was pretty instrumental in some of their galaxy-wide conflicts, and he even sacrificed himself during Secret Wars. Thankfully though, he was brought back and has become one of the most powerful and versatile mutants and Avengers. Now, there have been multiple Nova Primes throughout the history of the universe. Richard Rider is absolutely the main one, and he is fantastic, but when we first got Samuel Alexander in Point One Number 1 in 2011, he brought just a whole different vibe. Granted, being a younger guy with some huge shoes to fill, he doesn't exude the same kind of power that Richard Rider does, but that doesn't make him any less powerful. Sam has grown into a hero all of his own. He's fought alien warlords, evil Avengers doppelgangers, and interdimensional monsters, and he absolutely deserves the Nova mantle. While he can be reckless from time to time, thanks to his youth, independence, and loyalty, he still got offered a spot on 2016's all-new, all-different Avengers #1 by none other than the God of Thunder, Thor himself. Unfortunately for the Avengers though, Nova left the team pretty soon after with a few other younger heroes to form the Champions. And one of those young heroes was none other than Miles Morales. In the aftermath of the multiversal event Secret Wars, the second Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, aka Earth 1610, joined Marvel's main Earth 616 reality, and not too long after that, he also joined the Avengers in 2016 alongside Nova and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Now, Miles has essentially all the same abilities as Spider-Man himself, but then he has some that are wholly his own, and they're actually pretty cool. His signature difference in my eyes is his venom. It's like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like in punches, beams, and blasts, and he can even infuse it into his own webbing. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body and even his clothes and costume go invisible, but as I already said with Nova, these younglings weren't on the Avengers team for very long, leaving to form the Champions. But for Miles, his powers and his awesome mind actually lent a lot to the Avengers while he was there, and in return, he learned learned a heck of a lot from the older heroes while he was on that team. The Smashers of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard are human-like aliens using exospecs to grant themselves powers. Now for a long time, Vril Rock was the Soul Smasher, but he unfortunately met his end at the hands of the incredibly powerful mutant Vulcan. Isabel Izzy Kane is the granddaughter of World War II hero and Captain America buddy, Captain Terror. She was first ever introduced in Avengers Volume 5, number 1, and Izzy found the exospecs of a Smasher on the farm that she was raised on. These exospecs spoke to her and beckoned her to put them on, giving her access to the Smasher's powers. Izzy then traveled to the Shi'ar world of Chandalar, where she became a sub-guardian of the Imperial Guard. Now after returning back home to Earth, Izzy's grandfather with his last words told her to become a hero, and he gave her Captain America's business card, which, I'm sorry, that's kind of hilarious. Now being the first and only human recruit of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, gaining super strength, speed, energy blasts, and flight, plus her adventurous spirit and her grandfather's legacy, Captain America brought her onto the Avengers pretty quickly and with no contest, making her a big part of the team's spacefaring adventures. Vani Gast was the daughter of the Grand Master, one of the Elders of the Universe. She grew up exploring the cosmos by her father's side. Now when her father's title was threatened, she was granted teleportation powers that also had the added benefit of being able to alter people's memories. Vani took up the hero name Voyager and headed to Earth. Now Voyager met up with the Avengers and used her powers to insert herself into their memories as Valerie Vector, a founding member of the team who had bit the dust in the battle against the Squadron Sinister, which had removed her from existence and from everyone's memory. The Avengers' longtime butler, Edwin Jarvis, had collapsed due to an illness shortly before Voyager's arrival, so naturally, when Voyager arrived to the hospital Jarvis had just woken up in, he exposed the truth that Voyager had never actually been an Avenger. While this obviously didn't do her any favors, and she was pretty much booted from the team, she did admit that this was all the plan of her father, while she was actually inspired by the heroes and helped the Avengers to save the day a few times. And last up, the Avengers Unity Squad, first appearing in Uncanny Avengers, was an attempt to try and mend the human-mutant conflict after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. The idea? To take some X-Men, to take some Avengers, and just put them together. It's kind of surprising that it really hasn't been done before. Now one of the first main recruits, handpicked by Captain America himself in Uncanny Avengers Volume 1, Number 1 from 2012, was none other than Anna Marie, aka Rogue. Being a former villain and still mourning the loss of Charles Xavier, Rogue caused quite a bit of friction on this new team. She originally joined in order to keep an eye on the Scarlet Witch, who was also in the team of heroes, and as most of you know, caused quite a devastating blow to the mutant community with M-Day. But as time passed, Rogue became one of the most valuable members of the team, even growing to become its leader. But if we are talking about most powerful, while Rogue was on this team, she managed to absorb all the major Marvel heroes' powers and fought off a Celestial. So I'd say that's pretty darn powerful.
The Wonder Twins weren't exactly members of the Justice League, but they were interns. And honestly, I think the whole concept of them acting as interns at the Hall of Justice is so cute that I figured I would include them here. I also just really like the Wonder Twins, and I don't think they get mentioned enough, so I was happy when I thought of them as potential picks for this list. The Wonder Twins have the power to shapeshift. Together they are Zan and Jaina. Jaina has the power to shapeshift into any animal, whereas Zan has the power to shapeshift into water. They have to be together though to activate their powers. If you had powers that were tied to another person or another being, who would you choose to have them tied to? I personally think my partner would be a good pick because I'm like always around him, but also having them tied to a pet could be honestly pretty nifty. Also then you'd get to have a superpowered pet. How cool would that be? As I said earlier, I'm wondering who you usually think of when you think of the Justice League. You're probably thinking of some of the most iconic superheroes to have ever existed, right? I know I usually think of the big three, the holy trinity of heroes, if you will. Superman, Batman, and of course Wonder Woman. But this character is super powerful in the sense that she actually managed to beat all three of these heroes at the same time. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. And yet despite being a villain initially in the comics, who was known for being the partner of Batman's greatest foe, the Joker, she ended up recruited to the team anyway. Although to be fair to Harley Quinn, she's definitely been on a long and ever evolving path of redemption for many years now at this point in the comics. And I'd say at the very least she is more of an anti-hero in the comics right now, or even perhaps even a full-on hero. dare I say. Harley was initially recruited to join the Justice League team after the main roster was believed to have died. Even Harley acknowledged that she might not be the best fit for the heroic team dynamic though. When it comes to the Justice League, most people wouldn't think that trained assassins would fit in well with this team either. After all, isn't that a profession usually, more reserved for villains? However, when it comes to trained assassin Damien Wayne, it's not too surprising to consider, as he's also the son of one of the most well-known Justice League members and leaders, Batman, and Batman's current sidekick, Robin, in the comics. More recently, Damien was recruited to join a new team roster by his best friend, John Kent, the son of Superman. Ted Kord is someone more commonly associated with the Justice League, but some might be surprised, and hopefully delighted to learn, that Jaime Reyes, the new Blue Beetle, has also joined up with the team more recently. Jaime didn't make his first appearance until Infinite Crisis issue number 3 back in 2006. Unlike Ted, his suit was not something he made himself, but instead was basically an alien weapon that he bonded with through symbiosis, known as the Blue Beetle Scarab. Honestly, I would love to see more of Jaime on the Justice League. I feel like Jaime's such an underutilized character in the comics. He's so cool. Ted and Jaime are both cool Blue Beetles. I just love them both. Dr. Light isn't the newest of those mentioned in this video to join the League, but she is still a relatively, I would say, new character and member who has some pretty impressive powers. In the comics, there are actually two Dr. Lights. Now, one is Arthur Light, who is a super retro, super old character. He's from way back in the 60s, I believe, more known for his time as a villain, and the other is Dr. Light Kimiyohoshi, a scientist who ends up becoming a reluctant hero and also ends up kind of married to the original Dr. Light, Arthur Light. It's a thing that happened. Kimiyo's powers allow her to control light, allowing her to absorb it, project it, manipulate it, use it to create constructs, and transform into it, allowing her to phase, which I think is one of the most OP powers of all time, to be honest with you. While Dr. Light was a member of the Justice League in the previous New Earth continuity, yes, I know that, her Prime Earth continuity version wouldn't join up with the team until a little bit more recently in the comics, and she's always been a character who just kind of feels like she's on the fringes when it comes to her involvement in the Justice League, so every time she joins back up with them, I'm like, oh yeah, Dr. Light, and I feel like she just is not around as much, so yeah. Case in point, when she was recently invited back on the team by John Kent, only for his proposed team roster to basically be turned down. In the Prime Earth continuity, mention of her being a member of the Justice League happened as earliest as Blackest Night, I believe, if not before then, but yeah, still pretty recently, I'd say. Still modern. Although yeah, I know there's gonna be people that are gonna say, but New Earth, it was the 90s and the 80s, and you're correct, but it's technically a different version. I never know what to do when I come across these continuity divides. I'm like, there's New Earth and there's Prime Earth. They're kind of the same, but they're also different. DC Comics, continuity, what's up? What if I told you a fictional monster recently made their way onto the Justice League for a brief time? Would you believe me? Well, believe it, because it happened when Frankenstein was recruited to the team by Superman's son, Jonathan Kent. Even as I say these words, they do not sound real to me, but yes, this happened. Granted, the addition of Frankenstein to the team as a replacement roster, like previous members I've talked about that were suggested, was of course also rejected by Black Adam. But ultimately, I do think Frankenstein, had he been allowed to remain, would actually make a pretty solid member as a seemingly immortal, super strong, and durable zombie. Because that's what he is. In the comics, Frankenstein is a zombie who, like in the original story written by Mary Shelley, was created by Dr. Frankenstein. However, whereas in the novel, electric current was used to reanimate the assembled corpse parts, in the comics, alien blood played a crucial role in Dr. Frankenstein's corpse reanimation experiment. Aquaman also recently joined up with the Justice League, and if you're thinking, wait a minute, he's been a long time member and is not really new, Amanda, we are likely not thinking of the same Aquaman here. Allow me to expand. For the purpose of this video, I'm talking about Aquaman Jackson Hyde. Yes, Hyde as in David Hyde. This Aquaman is the son of Arthur Curry's sworn enemy, Black Manta. In fact, Jackson for a time was known as Aquaman's second in command, his protege or his sidekick, Aqualad. He used this name while operating as a member of the Teen Titans, but would eventually outgrow it and of course come to be known by the mantle of Aquaman. He is half Atlantean through his mom's side, as she was a Zebellian, a splinter group of Atlanteans from the Kingdom of Zebel who rebelled against the Kingdom of Atlantis. Also, I love that Zebel and Rebel, just, you know what I mean? That parallel, something about that I really like. Jackson was temporarily recruited by Jonathan Kent to join up with the Justice League to replace the main roster after they seemingly perished during Dark Crisis in the Death of the Justice League story. Of course, don't worry, they were fine, but now the Justice League is taking some time off, so kind of just in this weird like limbo period with them. But hey, we got the Titans, current premier superhero team. I love it. The Justice League have made some interesting recruiting choices in recent years. One of their most surprising recruits to some may be in their choice to welcome longtime Shazam villain Black Adam onto their team. Huh? However, I think the important thing to consider here is Black Adam's more recent history. Sure, he's been a villain for a long time in the comics, but in recent years he has actually acted as more of an anti-hero, being more known as a strong and loyal protector for his people and the land of Kandak. Even, yes, going on to earn a place on the Justice League. Surprising, but it's a thing. Hippolyta is definitely not someone you'd perhaps expect to see on the Justice League, but after her daughter Diana Prince, also known as Wonder Woman, ascended to cosmic godhood for a time following the events of Dark Knight's death metal, Hippolyta took up her place on the team. You might be thinking, but wait a minute Amanda, isn't Hippolyta also the queen of the Amazons? Didn't they need her? How did this work? Well, actually at this point Hippolyta had actually stepped down as ruler, with her role as leader being passed on to Nubia. Naomi is a new and original superhero who was recruited to the Justice League shortly after her introduction in the comics. She made her comic book debut in her own self-titled series in Naomi issue number 1. She was created by Brian Michael Bendis, David F. Walker, and the amazingly talented Jamal Campbell. We love Jamal Campbell, his art is stunning. Naomi believed initially that she was just an ordinary girl, but would go on to learn that she actually had powers very similar to Superman. However, she is not directly connected to Superman. She is not a Kryptonian, but instead is a young woman, not just from another world, but from basically another reality entirely. On her Earth, there was a battle between a small group who discovered they had powers after being exposed to radiation, which had kind of leaked into the Earth's atmosphere as a result of an environmental collapse. Naomi is the sole daughter of those who developed powers. It seemed initially as though they were all unable to procreate until her mom gave birth to her. Jealous, superpowered Zambado attempts to snuff out Naomi's life, but she is sent away just in time to safety through a portal, ending up of course on Prime Earth. When her powers manifested, she ended up seeking aid and mentorship from Superman after escaping Zambado, who had attempted to once again recapture her years after her escape.
Killmonger had his own sim called Injudaka, named after Eric Killmonger's Wakandan name. Eric became a warrior for the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, but the Emperor started getting the vibe that Eric wanted to overthrow him. To stop this from happening, he sent Eric on a mission he hoped he wouldn't come back from, as the place was crawling with shadow people, Cronins, and of course Sims. That backfired so hard, it's crazy. Not only did Eric survive, he managed to find the one Sim that he could bond with because they shared a mutual hatred of the Emperor. That's kind of funny, sorry. The bonded pair did in fact put an end to the Emperor and then became the new Emperor. Eventually, you know, the bonded pair got in a big fight with T'Challa, and at the end of it, Eric was caught in an explosion of a planet's core. The body for Eric died, but the soul survived because the Sim survived and carried it with it. There was a resurrection ceremony, but he did still die in the end. There was a moment when he was ridiculously powerful though. The Sim on its own made Eric powerful, giving him advanced everything like speed and strength and reflexes, stamina, also a healing factor, matter generation abilities, and shapeshifting. The true power of the Sim unlocked when he drained the powers of Bast. That's right, the child of Ra, Black Panther goddess, so he was truly overpowered for that era. Deadpool has been around the block, so to say, too many times to count. In every sense, this man has done everything in the Marvel Universe, including bonding to a Sim. Agent Deadpool was the name taken on here, and he first appeared in 2020 on Earth 1051. To fight the Codex Hive, the Sim Soldier program was created, and Deadpool, of course, bonded with a Sim because of it. Agent Deadpool has very similar powers to Venom and powerful regeneration abilities because he has the Sim's regeneration and Deadpool's regeneration. He was also decked out with with lots of spikes and weapons. Rascal was originally an offshoot of Bedlam that was left to Kang the Conqueror, off to a great start there. Then the sim was sent to the 21st century on Earth 616 and hybridized with a Carnage sim sample. Then he was stolen, kidnapped by Dylan Brock and Venom, and offered to Normie Osborn so Normie could help Dylan rescue his dad. So quite the origin story, huh? Normie in the past had bonded with Carnage and didn't enjoy it, so he wasn't super stoked to bond with Rascal, but did it anyway to help his friend. Rascal made Normie appear as a red, white, and black edition of the Red Goblin. Since the sim is technically really young, he is kind of like a really dangerous toddler. He is described as naive, inquisitive, and easily distracted. Me too. He also sometimes goes into something Normie calls goblin mode. It's a feral rage. He's completely feral. Turns out that the feral rage wasn't the sim's fault, it was actually the human's fault. Was this discovered in a therapy session? Of course not. It was discovered in the heat of battle. Turns out goblin mode was just a manifestation of Normie's suppressed, deepest, darkest desires. Though the sim is young, he still has all the usual powers like strength and speed and a healing factor. Plus, his powers are very similar to what Carnage has going on since he was a hybrid of Carnage, so that means Rascal is capable of a lot of what Carnage is, like telepathy, wall crawling, webbing, among other things. Rascal can shapeshift, he turns his arms into blades. Void Knight is cool. If you heard of him, you probably agree. If you haven't, so glad I get to be your introduction. Void Knight is a proto-sim. That means, according to the Marvel Wiki, he is an experimental precursor to the parasitic sim species, rather than being sims themselves. So he is one, technically. He did die as quickly as he appeared, which is unfortunate because he looked cool. Void had one mission, one job while he was alive, and that was destroy light and life. You've heard of live, laugh, love, get ready for death, pain, and darkness. He was bonded to the Silver Surfer, so for that era of his life, he had all the Silver Surfer powers, but they were magnified by the Living Abyss, so Super Silver Surfer. The sim worked under Null and was apparently one of his favorites. If you want to see Void Knight's short-lived run, read Silver Surfer Black 2. So this sim has technically been around for a while. He was mentioned for the first time in 1973, but really picked up steam a few years ago in 2018. I think it is literally the coolest because it is a dragon sim. The dragon has lived a long life, like billions of years long, so don't feel too bad that it did pass away. The dragon does have a name, sorry, it's Grendel. Grendel manifested from Null's blood and actually had a sister too. The pair of them literally ransacked the universe for a long time until lucky us, they landed on Earth and picked Denmark as their home. The dragon got its Grendel title because it was mistaken as the monster Dark Elf Grendel. Honest mistake. His powers apparently come directly from Null, so that makes it extremely powerful. Because it ransacked the universe, it has the power of interstellar flight, all the usual stuff like strength and speed and stamina, and a healing factor that works really fast, and of course matter manipulation of its body to create tendrils and other related things. This particular sim has the unsettling ability to reanimate and bond with corpses. Hate that. The dragon can be affected by large quantities of electricity, so fighting Thor was tough. And also, like other sims, heat was not great for the dragon either. Not like career ending, just uncomfortable. Grendel could be killed, but up until that point it was immortal. Extreme Biote was a sim to my guy, Iron Man. He was also originally one of the dragons, so that means dragon sim powers, like being powerful enough to kill a god and everything else said in the previous point. This particular sim got some new fun abilities when it merged with an Iron Man suit and infused with the Extremis virus. The combination of the two things gave the sim the ability to project a cleansing beam. The cleansing beam was a repulsor blast that was able to cleanse the corruption from a Null victim. That's useful! Extreme can also possess things. Iron Man used Extreme to override the possession Null had over a Celestial. The Celestial didn't get much of a break though, because then Extreme possessed him. The main form the sim took on was a black and yellow Iron Man looking armor, but he could shapeshift back to his true dragon form whenever he wanted to. All the way from Earth 6311 comes Warstar, one of many Type 2 battle sims that were created by Kang the Conqueror and Tyro. This sim is known for following the rules, a real stickler for protocol. He kind of resembles a robot in the way he behaves. The robot sim, he's not really a robot, is very loyal to Kang and did go up against him once, but it was a training exercise. Still, going up against Kang is tough. Not that I would know personally, but I've read about it. The sim is fun because he can take on a human-esque form without a host. He also has cybernetic enhancements to his body, at least it looks that way, that let him transform his body into various weapons, even replicating Kang's time sword. Lots of sims are sensitive to fire, but Warstar doesn't seem to have that problem, as he can turn parts of his body into a flamethrower. He debuted in Venom Volume 5, Issue 8. Serpent also debuted in Venom Volume 5, but this time it was Issue 13. Serpent started out as a mindless sample of living abyss. It soon gained consciousness from the residue of Eddie Brock's rage and bloodlust. Iconic. Imagine being filled with and expelling so much rage you spawn a sim. Though the sim gained consciousness, it was still slightly mindless and acted mainly with base instincts, so that means it went on lots of brutal rampages. Serpent also had powers from King in Black and used the last of it to escape a fight with Thor and throw its consciousness away through space and time. The physical form that was left in Remnants, and those bonded with Donald Blake and merged with Hellner. So this sim has the powers of King in Black, your average sim, and Hellner at its disposal at one point or another during its chaotic lifetime. The name Serpent shows in the thing's face. It can generate fang jaws and a long serpent-like tongue to chomp on enemies. Silence is the sim debuted in Extreme Carnage Phage, and they are a hybrid, creating using the biological data from Scream and the anti-venom serum. I love that the sims are Scream and Silence. I think that is such a good idea. Silence has a personality, good for her. Since she is a hybrid, she possesses the powers of Scream and anti-venom. So that's the usual: strength, speed, agility, regeneration, but also from the Scream side of the family, trichokinesis, and from the anti-venom side of the family, presumably the body cleansing. The sim seems to be obsessed with suffering and making it stop by any means necessary, leaving only silence. According to Marvel.com, Misery is literally the newest sim in the Marvel Universe. She was introduced in Cult of Carnage Misery 1, and that happened almost 1 year ago. It's almost her birthday. Alchemax decided to study Carnage offshoots and expose them to anti-venom. Delicate work. Unfortunately, Alchemax got attacked, and CEO Liz Allen was exposed to Misery. Misery is a unique sim as she is a hybrid of Carnage and anti-venom. The Carnage and anti-venom sims hate each other and are always hoping to destroy the other, so that means Liz was gifted with a more powerful than usual healing factor. Her body is extremely malleable. She can be ripped in half and it means nothing. She can melt into a puddle and it means nothing, and her limbs can also transform into weapons. This is a little bonus because I'm not sure if it really works, and there's not a lot of info on the character right now, but in the Cult of Carnage Misery comics, we get introduced to Madness. Madness is made up of a bunch of sims stolen from Alchemax: Riot, Phage, Agony, Lasher, Scream, and Toxin. Does that also not make him a new sim? If so, I think he would be the most powerful. It looks like from the comics that he has all the powers of all 6 sims combined, and the human host himself is a little deranged, so that's like a recipe for disaster for Madness. The character was literally described by Marvel like this: there is nowhere Liz Allen can go that Madness cannot follow, no one she can ask for help that Madness cannot destroy, and nothing she can do to stop the brutality of its onslaught. Sounds like a nightmare to me.
Iska is the sister-in-law to Apocalypse, being the sister of his wife, Genesis. Also, yes, Apocalypse has a wife. Iska's mutant ability is probably one of the coolest out there, in a similar vein, but even more impressive seemingly, than Domino's luck ability. Iska's power is that she can never lose. She was one of the chosen champions of Arakko who competed in the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, and of course, won against her competitor, the current Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock. Her power, however, seemingly forced her to change sides in the war between the mutants of Arakko, her home world, her home island, I guess I should say, and the demons of Amenth, led by Annihilation. She abandoned the mutants of Arakko, joining up with the Amenthi due to the fact that the mutants were kinda on the losing side, and her power, of course, prevents her from ever losing. You have no choice when that's your power. While Punchline might be kinda new on the scene, she did go toe-to-toe with Harley Quinn, herself known for being a pretty deadly and unstoppable villain when she wants to be, so it's pretty impressive that when it came to Punchline versus Harley Quinn, Punchline came out on top. Punchline sliced Harley Quinn's throat and left her for dead in the sewers below Gotham during Joker War, but of course, Harley would recover. She got better. Still, Punchline's victory was surprising for her being such a new and unseasoned character and baddie, so I think we learned then that she is a force to be reckoned with, and is definitely a character for us to keep an eye on. I also feel like Alexis K's backstory, which was explored in one of the stories featured in the Joker 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular, was really fascinating. personally. I do hope we get to explore her character more because I think her anarchistic nature and her outlook on the world are actually quite interesting. Punchline seems to enjoy fighting with stiletto daggers and dreaming up her own deadly brews of poison, even creating her own special brew of Joker venom for Batman, which gave him his own pretty awful trip during Joker War. You know you're in the future when you're recruiting a whole city to your cause. That is exactly what happened here with the Impossible City. The Impossible City was initially used as a base for a group of multiversal superheroes. Who was this group of multiversal superheroes? We don't currently know, but what we do know is after they left their base, seemingly for good for some reason, their prisoners escaped. This villainous troop, who had been trapped here, was known as the Ashen Combine. The Ashen Combine would then make the city their own base, and it would provide the backdrop for their final stand against the Avengers. When the Ashen Combine was defeated, the Impossible City actually offered to join up with the Avengers team. Oh yeah, the Impossible City is also aptly named because it is a sentient and living city as well. The Avengers accepted the offer, and as such the Impossible City was introduced as both the base for and a team member and ally to the Avengers team. Pretty cool. Oh my goodness, because this list is titled characters, I can actually include side characters who are just usually normal, non-powered and non-villainous folks as well. Well, I mean kinda normal, they do still exist in comics, so you know, but yay! Jeff Bannister is an ally and later friend of Wolverine's and a CIA agent who first appeared in Benjamin Percy's Wolverine series in issue number 1 and has appeared here and there throughout that series in spots. He teamed up with Wolverine to learn the source of and put a stop to a deadly new hallucinogen that had surfaced called the pollen. Together, he and Wolverine tracked down the Flower Cartel and the Pale Girl, who was initially thought to be a shared hallucination brought on by this substance, though we later learned that she was actually a real person. Hey! Jeff Bannister also has a daughter who suffers from cancer, or who suffered from cancer. After Bannister worked with and befriended Wolverine, Logan was actually able to help his daughter by getting her immediate access to the Krakoan medicines, which of course helped to cure her. Yay! Logan also gifted Bannister a Krakoan gate following their adventure together. Cute. You know me? I love a bromance. Just like Superman has Mr. Mixius Pitalik and Batman has Batmite, Dick Grayson, the superhero known as Nightwing, now has his own imp superfan from the 5th dimension, known as Dixel. Though Dixel prefers to be known, of course, as Nightmite. Well, it might seem strange, I would say that Dixel is actually kind of also like a superhero at this point. He is an imp from the 5th dimension, he is a bit mischievous, but ultimately he is genuinely well-meaning and helpful, unlike most other imps who are much more mischievous or just downright troublesome, to be honest. Being an imp from the 5th dimension also means that Dixel can be super powerful, as he has magical reality bending and reality warping powers. Nightmite made his first appearance in the comics in issue number 98 of Nightwing back in late 2022, so he's still a pretty new character who hasn't made a ton of appearances yet. Genesis is a pretty important character who apparently has always existed, but who we never really knew about until recently. She made her first full appearance in the 2019 run of X-Men back in issue number 12. We would learn that she was the wife of Apocalypse, who was long ago lost to her husband, who ended up leaving another mutant island nation known as Araco. The other half, it turns out, of Krakoa, because they used to once be joined together and were known as Okara. Genesis is a strong warrior and an all-around badass. Basically, pretty much exactly what you'd expect Apocalypse's wife to be like. She also happens to be a mother, as it turns out that Apocalypse and Genesis together had a whole family of strong, also badass, and scary mutant children. When I was first introduced to him, I would have never thought I would ever include this character on a list like this. But over time, I actually came to be a pretty big fan, even though I still think his name is pretty ridiculous. But I miss him. Ghostmaker, initially in the comics, is a mysterious vigilante who seeks to usurp Batman as a protector of Gotham. But we would later come to know him as Min-Kwa Khan, one of the best friends and best rivals Batman has ever had. Wayne met Khan when the two were younger and both on their own separate journeys, training to become masterful vigilantes, each for their own separate reasons. While Batman has stayed in Gotham his whole life, his purpose for becoming a hero tied to the city, and of course the trauma that he experienced there, Ghostmaker actually travels the world, seemingly acting as a vigilante because of how much he prides himself on his feats and his accomplishments. Ghostmaker is often shown to be a psychopath, seemingly not capable of of feeling any empathy for the people he saves, and motivated solely by pushing himself to the unimaginable. At least that's how he likes to advertise himself. However, we learn in the conclusion of one of his backstories featured in Batman Annual 2021 that he may actually have a more personal connection to vigilantism than he lets on. You should check out that whole backstory that leads up to that annual, it's really good. Katie, or Ruin Chen, is probably one of my favorite new characters in the MCU. If not just my full-on favorite now. Definitely of the normal people allies. Katie is the best friend of Sean and grew up with him, but later learns that her friend Sean has a complicated past that he has been running from for years. And in fact, Sean's given name was never even Sean, but instead is Shang-Chi. Katie might not have superpowers, but she comes with a can-do attitude no matter the odds. We also learned that despite the fact that Katie works as a valet alongside Sean, that she graduated from Berkeley, but isn't really doing much with her college degree. Katie loves driving fast and karaoke. Honestly, a woman after my own heart. Also, she's played by Awkwafina. I love Awkwafina. I know Tarn is still currently dead right now, but man do I miss him. He was such a great and intimidating villain. Tarn was a major antagonist throughout a good amount of the Krakoan era. Mainly the middle section, I'd say. Honestly, he's terrifying, so I think he deserves to be a villain to many different mutant supers. He's shown up mainly in both Hellions and X-Men Red, acting as a villain who also opposes another fellow villain who's still kind of villainous, but you know, is supposed to be, at least at the time, was supposed to be on the good side. Mr. Sinister and his team of unlikely heroes, the Hellions. Poor Hellions, oh, so sad. Tarn also fought against Storm, who had become regent of planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars. Don't worry though, Storm beat him in combat. Yes. Even though Tarn sat on the Great Ring of Arakko, their governing body, he still seemed like he was always planning something terrible, always up to some kind of vile mischief. And honestly, he probably was. He's basically like the Arakko version of Sinister, which makes him infinitely more dangerous and overall, I would say, worse. I mean, worse in a good way though, for a villain. Tarn made his first appearance in Hellions in issue number 6 in 2020 and was created by Zeb Wells and Carmen Carnero. Horticulture is probably one of my favorite new villain teams and, honestly, groups of characters we've seen thus far in the Krakoan era. I still love them, I always come back to them, they're just great. They're a team of elderly women who are scientists, specifically working in botany with plants. Their goal is to eliminate a large chunk of the human population in an effort to return the Earth to a more natural and quote-unquote pristine state. Their leader is Augusta, and members include Lily, Edith, and Opal. It is possible there could be more members of Horticulture as well. These are just the 4 women that we're familiar with based on their appearances in the X-Men comics, primarily the 2019 X-Men series and the tie-in Empire Limited series, where they appeared as enemies and for a short time reluctant allies. We've also learned through the Avengers side of things that however, Augusta's great niece, was a former member of the team who split off to do her own thing. Horticulture made their first appearance in volume 5 of the X-Men in issue number 3. That's the 2019 run, baby.
Like father, like son, John Kent is the founder of the new Justice League, so we do have to give him his flowers here. When the Justice League we are used to seeing perishes, John recognizes the world needs a new team of protectors, so he gets straight to work creating a new Justice League. John Kent is Superman's son. He started as Superboy, moved up to Superman, but it was not an easy journey. He was kidnapped and thrown across universes and time, but he also learned a lot, enough to be a sound leader. He is invulnerable. He can absorb power from the sun to give himself a power boost. He flies, he has heat vision, he's very strong. He can make himself explode. It's called a solar flare. He expels a lot of energy pretty much. He has the X-ray vision, he's very fast, and there's even more he's capable of that hasn't even been discovered yet. But despite all that, one very specific thing, kryptonite can still have a seriously negative effect on the hero. We have to talk about Damien Wayne, also known as Robin, also known as John's best friend. They started out really rocky, like fighting all the time, interventions, you kinda know the vibe, but eventually grew to be good teammates and friends because they were forced to work together. It makes sense that Damien would be on Kent's new Justice League since they fought as a team so much. Damien is also just someone you want on your team. His resume goes crazy. If you look at the abilities section on his character wiki, it is like a master list of every human-based ability one could ever develop. To rattle off some of these skills we know Damien for: martial arts, disguise, investigation, archery, stealth, sword fighting, and clearly more. In addition to the ridiculously long list of skills, he has the Wand of Clarion, a magic wand that can only be used once. Super useful. One thing that I did find cute about John and Damien's friendship is Damien had a couple years on John when they were younger, and he would not let him forget it. John couldn't be on the Teen Titans with Damien at first because he wasn't a teen like Damien was. Jackson Hyde is Aqualad and an absolute icon. We love him. He's from Atlantis, if you couldn't guess from his name. That also means he can breathe underwater and do all the underwater stuff. Jackson is capable of hydrokinesis, which is the ability to control water mentally. He can actually make things. He made a functioning spear once. He can also blood bend, allegedly, or twist someone inside out, and I don't like that, but humans are like 55 to 60% water, so I guess it makes sense. It's a good thing he is a hero, basically. He is also able to make ice and also melt ice quickly, and I do have questions. Could he melt Mr. Freeze or Iceman? I know he's Marvel, but it's a fun question to ponder. He can be like a toaster in a bathtub, capable of electrokinesis or emitting bioelectric shocks from his body. When released all at once, it creates a big blast. Fun fact, he is really good in combat because he was trained by Robin. The new team had 2 Blue Beetles, Blue Beetle squared, but we will start with Jaime Reyes. Reyes is a young, energetic hero who was minding his business, trying to get through school, but then one day, him and his friends found a scarab floating in the river, so of course they investigate, and the thing attaches itself to Reyes. Now, he is the host for this scarab. Throughout his hero lifetime, he has joined the Justice League International and of course John's new Justice League. The scarab gives the kid the majority of his powers in the form of a super suit, of course, the Blue Beetle armor. The armor can change shape, used mainly to create weapons, wings, and to look cool. He can also manipulate energies in the suit, making energy shields or energy pulses that cause serious damage to anything in close vicinity to the hero. So that is one of the Blue Beetles. The other Blue Beetle, that is Theodore Cord. He's a bit low on self-esteem, but he's got the spirit. He's also the benefactor to Reyes Blue Beetles, so they are connected in more than just the name. He is very intelligent and a skilled inventor, and also the heir to a company, so he is in a place to be a benefactor. Theodore developed a super suit, but wasn't superheroing. He was holding back because heroes without a set name or a clear look would sometimes just be assigned silly names, and his confidence was already very low. I don't know if he would survive that, but as fate would have it, an interaction with his neighbor, the Golden Age Blue Beetle, would have him taking up that mantle in no time. Theodore would end up joining Justice League International and Kent's new Justice League. A hero we will talk about next, Booster Gold, is Theodore's best friend. They started out as not friends at all, but they are at friendship bracelet level now. There was once a time when Theodore was offered a spot on the Justice League proper, and he gave it up because Booster Gold wasn't invited. That's a friend for life right there, and I hope nothing bad ever happens to them. Booster Gold, let's get into the time-traveling 25th century, maybe 31st century disaster. Michael Carter is not really a disaster anymore, but the start of his hero's journey certainly was. He was a college football player in the 25th century, and he was really good, but his mom was sick. To cover her medical bills, he would gamble on his games, and that didn't go over well as Michael was found out and banned from football. He became a night janitor at a museum and then robbed said museum, then arrived in the 21st century with the intention of becoming a big hero. He was selected to lead the Justice League International and then later joined Kent's League. As just Michael, he is just a guy, but most of his powers come from his equipment. He has a Legion flight ring, so therefore he can fly. Bet you didn't see that coming. His power suit makes him extra strong and is very good at protecting his body. Getting shot at means absolutely nothing to that suit. He is also capable of producing a force field. He wears gauntlets that project energy and a visor to give him X-ray vision. Dr. Light has joined the Super Squad and she does not come to play. She's connected to the light of creation, meaning she can control light, manipulate it to her will. This is known as photokinesis. Dr. Light didn't tap into the full extent of her powers for a long time, but then she entered the orrery of worlds and all bets were off. She put the power to good use. Team Justice Incarnate was exorcised of the Great Darkness in no time. I think it's cool how she can absorb Kryptonian heat vision because technically, yeah, that is a form of light. She can also throw it back at people or things, and it might even be more powerful than when it was absorbed. She can project light blasts and turn herself into light. She is literally the size fun. When she does turn into light, she can pass through transparent material like glass. She also can fly because she is that girl. Dr. Light was once married to a supervillain who also went by Dr. Light at one point. They divorced, and she ended up looking back on the relationship with disdain. She also joined Kent's new league. Lady Gaga, also known as Harley Quinn, joined Kent's new league. It really is just like the strangest assortment of heroes, but I kinda love it. Harley was a good choice for the team. She is just the right amount of unhinged. She is immune to most poisons, but she is allergic to cats, which I think is very, very tragic, and I'm so sorry, girl. She can fight, she can flip, she can fire any form of weapon, and she is sneaky. Having Harley on the team was a real asset, but also a problem at first because she spent most of her life as a villain, and Black Adam told League leader John that his team wasn't ready to fight because he had former villains on his team. I think we should give people a second chance, but that is just me. Harley was also part of another league called the Justice League of Wisdom, created to counter the Omega Titans. Reformed villain Frost seems super cool, pun intended. She has one of those names that you know what's going to happen to her. Her name is Caitlin Snow. It would be more surprising if she didn't get ice-based powers at some point. So she is a scientist, and she was working on this engine, but then the engine was going to be used by evil people, and that's not allowed. So Caitlin ripped out the wires to the engine's coolant system. She did a good thing that resulted in a pretty bad thing for her. She ended up bonded to ice. She craves heat, so that means heat vampire absorbs it from those around her. If she doesn't do this, her body starts shutting down. Usually it's a harmless thing, but one time she was locked in a freezer purposefully by a villain, and she was only able to get herself back to a livable state by almost absorbing all of someone else's heat. Frost joined Suicide Squad for a minute there, but her heart lies with heroes, so she joined the new Justice League of America soon after. Frank is a good one to know, but you might know him as Frankenstein's monster. This guy has joined the Justice League Dark and Justice League United, so he has range. For a long, like a few major world conflicts long time, Frank fought with Shade, even becoming a leader in a Shade project, but things started getting rocky with the relationship, so when the opportunity to join the Justice League Dark showed, he took it. Frank stuck around until it disbanded during New 52. Frank is going to be around for a long time since he is undead. He is also then immortal, but on top of that, he doesn't need to eat or breathe or drink. The undead guy has fought in too many wars to count and has won too many battles to count. As a zombie, he is very strong and his stamina is amazing. He is good with most weapons, his hands, guns, and swords especially. The only downside that comes with his Frankenstein status is that he can't heal. So if any injury happens and it's severe enough, he has to replace the whole section with a new body part, Frankenstein style. Frank seems like a super interesting character, and I can't wait to see even more of him.